Well, good afternoon. First of all, I want to say hello to my colleagues with the Colombian government. I want to say hello to Colombian international investors and generally to all the attendees to this conference who took their time off to be here. I want to thank you especially ProColombia, the Colombian Embassy in the UK, the British Embassy in Colombia, the Colombian Stock Exchange, and all entities and organizations that made possible this important event. So I'll start with saying, where are we? Major transport concessions were developed in Colombia since the early 90s. The success in attracting long-term private investment in infrastructure is considered by us, Colombians, as a major achievement. It is the recognition of a status as a country with reliable government institutions and a consistent level of economic growth. This has been helped by the fact that Colombia has a good international credit record as a country, by never having defaulted on its debt, nor allowing ever its public debt payments to become overdue. Colombia's economy grew last year at an annual rate of 2.6%, and it is expected to grow this year at an annual rate of 3.6%, according to the most recent World Bank forecast. First quarter foreign direct investment in our country was up by 68% compared to the first quarter of the previous year. So we are very optimistic. Our flagship highway program, the 4G, has received commitments of around $11 billion to date in equity and debt financing. At least $8 billion more are needed to ensure its completion. Last year, around $1.5 billion were invested in the highway program. This year, we project that $2 billion will be effectively invested, and we expect that $2.5 billion will be invested the following year. We have also several new projects in highways, airports, railways, and logistics centers in need of funds. Why is it a good decision to invest in Colombian transport infrastructure? As mentioned before, Colombia's economy is expected to grow by 3.6% during 2019. Moreover, this adds to a long period of consistent economic growth since 2002. International investors seeking healthy returns have found very attractive opportunities in our country. Since 2012, a regulatory framework was developed to facilitate private investment in the transport sector, basically through PPP schemes. This framework regulates the characteristics of the bidding process, the terms and conditions of the concession contract, the risk allocation between the contracting authority and the sponsor, the construction and operating stages, the early termination, the reversion, the remuneration of the sponsor, the lender's rights, the land acquisition process, the allowed delays, the force majeure cases, and so on. A specialized contracting agency was created, Agencia Nacional de Infraestructura, for which I work. This agency focuses on granting the concessions, it signs the PPPs, and supervising the execution of the contracts. Also, standard contracts were developed to facilitate the process and generally facilitate the understanding of the rights and obligations of contractors and investors, lenders, and their different circumstances, even unforeseen circumstances. The current government is convinced of the long-term essence of building up transport infrastructure, from conception and planning to construction, completion, and maintenance. By its very nature, transport infrastructure oversteps single governments. Thus, our commitment has been to give continuity to the projects that had been started, signed, or structured by previous administrations, and that were under normal execution. And also, and perhaps more significant, our commitment has been to solve the obstacles which had been hampering the development of many other projects also inherited from former governments. Even more important, the current government is renewing our emphasis on the rule of law, our emphasis on the respect for the country's main institutions, on the importance of fairness and justice, and on the belief of private enterprise and investment as the main driving force behind social and economic development. In summary, what we are aiming for now is for a stable, continuous, and very large participation of private financing in transport infrastructure. We are providing a specific regulatory framework and the reliability and credibility needed to invest. Where are we heading on transport infrastructure with the current government? We are working on many fronts and projects simultaneously. Given budgeting constraints and particular circumstances that prioritize certain projects, we follow the blueprint set up a few years ago by the Intermodal Master Plan, Plan Maestro de Transporte Intermodal, to complete the main network of roads, airports, railways, ports, and logistic nodes considered necessary to dramatically increase Colombia's productivity. Significantly, we are aware that PPPs are still a relatively new concept in our country. So we are closely evaluating the performance of the projects with the latest version of the contracts, of the 4G contracts, looking for better ways to do things. Successful PPP project management requires a systematic and well-organized approach to carrying out a complex series of interrelated tasks. There is always room for improvement. During this government, we have attained several enhancements on two fields. First, interinstitutional coordination within the government. When budgeting, planning, and developing transport infrastructure, several government agencies participate. This includes the environmental licensing process, among many other occasionally cumbersome tasks. The Vice President of Colombia herself runs a Transport Infrastructure Coordinating Committee, which meets bi-weekly with the presence of all related agencies and authorities from the central government, and eventually with local authorities relevant to the issues under discussion. This speeds up all the activities and has been very well received by sponsors and constructors. We have made also significant progress in contractual management. As the latest version of the standard PPP contract is put to test, we are managing with greater efficiency, making better use of the tools already in place in the contract, applying flexibility and common sense without deviating from the core of the obligations of the sponsor and the constructor and the relationship with the contracting authority. And two final aspects on which we are working heavily and which, to a certain extent, explain our presence here, using the opportunity provided by the Insideout event. In first place, we are looking to diversify the sources of financing and to ever increase the participation of international pension funds and similar funds with long-term investment profiles, and also increase the use of international capital markets through the issuance of securities. On the other side, we want to attract more sponsors and constructors from all over the world, sponsors and constructors with a proven record of experience who will be professionally able to meet the challenges of contributing to the development of transport infrastructure in Colombia. To them, in addition to what I have already stated, we will reiterate that we have a transparent, competitive process that guarantees fairness and the awarding of projects to the lowest cost, highest quality offer. So let me have a short presentation. Well, we'll have a look at the regulatory framework, the creation of the ANI. We'll have a fast view of the overview of the 4G projects in execution. We'll have a look at the new projects to be awarded soon. So first of all, as I was mentioning, in year 2012, a new law was enacted, and this law gave the general framework for the development of PPP projects. Projects of that kind had been developed since the 1990s, but really the regulatory framework is much more recent. Other laws were developed after that to refine and precise the framework. So to cover most of the aspects of the framework. So we have a legal framework. We have an institution, which is the Agencia Nacional de Infraestructura. We have a standard contract, and we have financial incentives. On the financial incentives, also the Financiera de Desarrollo Nacional was created, and that has been very helpful in the development of the program, the role of the FDN. So the ANI has a technical staff with proven skills and proficient in what we are doing. We have a long-term planning, a long scope and a long pipeline of future projects. We supervise and we really try to enhance transparency. Transparency has been internationally recognized. The ANI has received several awards and has been granted prizes all around the international prizes. And we believe that the transparency of the process at the ANI, it's a fact and it's something that has helped a lot improving our process of granting the projects. We'll have a short look of the fast overview of the projects that we are now supervising, that are under execution, which are the fourth generation projects. Before that, there exist 17 projects with 3,500 kilometers developed, and that's what we call first to third generation contracts. The 4G contract is the new contract, and those are projects signed between 2014 and 2016, but most of them only recently started. And we'll have a fast overview on airports, railway and ports projects. These are the 4G projects, more or less in a ranking. The number one project is the more advanced project, and so on. This is the capex that each project has. So you can see by the numbers that all of these projects are huge. There are many projects that need investments of $750 million, for example. There are projects that are close to $1 billion in capex investment, and in addition to that, many more operational investments and expenses. For the financing of these projects, we have attracted many international banks. So already ING is part of the financing schemes. BBVA, Colombian and the International Bank. We have funds managed by Ashmore and managed by BlackRock, who are also invested. We have pension funds from Canada, like Caisse de dépôt Placement de Québec. We have development banks from Europe, like the KfW bank from Germany, the Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. We have all of the Colombian banks are also participating. We have issued securities through Goldman Sachs, which are 144 Reg S. So already many aspects of many ways of financing and acquiring funds have been already in place. But we want to enhance this, and we still need lots of financing. So the 10 the most advanced roads. And you can see the program is huge because these are 10 roads. And now this is number 16, for example. And these roads, they cover Colombia and cross Colombia from east, west, and south, north, through all the three cordilleras. Up to 21 is how the president was mentioning, that we have 70% of the 4G projects, unblocked or moving. So these 21 projects are moving without real problems and without major hurdles, and they are advancing successfully. The last one to have started operations was Villavicencio Yopal. The rest of the projects have different types of problems that have them stuck. But for example, another project that we intend to put into place, to start moving in the next month is Lobo Guerrero Mulaló, which is a road that connects Jumbo, the industrial part of Cali, with the road to Buenaventura, and that's only pending a environmental license. The rest of the projects have different situations, which make them, The impact of the 4G program is huge. We intend to create more than 120,000 jobs, and the process has already created over 50,000 jobs. And that's direct, and the indirect impact is tremendous. And we intend to improve 30% on the average time of transport. But even more than improving the time is improving the reliability. Improving the thing that you know that when you take the road that you will be able to go to the other side. And these roads have many services, like emergency services and so on. And so that's an added benefit that these roads have. Also the specifications. Most of the roads are double carriageway with double lanes, so that enhances a lot transport also in Colombia and improves competitiveness. This is a distribution of the 10 billion that have been funded to date. As I was commenting, we have different sources have already participated. We are looking forward to even more diversification. And now these are the projects that we intend to award in the near future. These are some of the roads. For example, we have Alo Sur and Accesos Norte. That's a south entrance and north entrance to the city of Bogota. We intend to have the process ready by the end of this year, and hopefully to be able to award to both works before the current mayor of Bogota steps down from office. We have, for example, Villeta Guaduas and Santuario Caño Alegre. Those will complete double carriageway with double lanes from Bogota to Medellin. So it will, that way we will link both the largest cities in Colombia. Puerto Salgar San Roque is the new version of the old Ruta del Sol 2, which ran into problems due to the Odebrecht scandal, and which was being constructed by Odebrecht. So the expected investment is over $1 billion and $100 million. And then we have Lobo Guerrero Buenaventura, which is the completion of the double carriageway, double lane from Cali to Buenaventura, the main port in the Pacific, as the president was mentioning this morning. In airports, we are immediately working on these concessions, which is the airport from the terminal from San Andres and Providencia, the airports of Cali and related airports in the southwestern part of Colombia, the refurbishment of the current airport of Cartagena, and the new taxiways and improvement of the airfield at El Dorado Airport. Through this initiative and other improvements that we have to do at El Dorado Airport, we should be able to have to improve the quantity of operations that the airport does from 70 to 90 per hour, which is precisely what Heathrow does also with two runways. And we are working also on an additional terminal and a third runway for El Dorado Airport. That's almost $3 billion proposition. On railway corridors, we're working on La Dorada Chiriguaná, which is being upgraded, and eventually we'll be able to move cargo permanently from the center of Colombia to Santa Marta. Yeah, that goes parallel to the Magdalena River. And we're working on a logistics center in Buenaventura. On ports, we are working on 2 or 3 deep sea ports, which are in a very early stage of development as a project. But we recently signed Puerto Antioquia with an investment, an overall investment of over $500 million, and it's an investment of $250 million on the government-owned part. Those ports are very interesting because there are new ports on the Urabá Gulf, and they will enhance and change the logistics from the coffee-growing region and from Antioquia, and their communication with the rest of the world. And that's basically what I had to show to you. I'm open to any questions, any observations. We'll be here tomorrow to try to have sessions one-on-one and go into more detail on any of the projects that anyone might be interested. So thanks so much.
So I'd like to begin by giving a very, very heartfelt thank you to the organizers for such a fantastic event with so many of you here. So thank you to Pro-Colombia, thank you to the Chamber, thank you to the Lord Mayor for allowing us in his house. What a fantastic event we've had here today, which will continue with more presentations about the opportunities that exist in Colombia. So I was in Bosa last Thursday. Bosa is a poor district of Bogota, and I was there primarily to speak to a group of children. And the reason for that was we had an English project there. But children are fantastic because they ask really direct questions. And so they wanted to know from me, what exactly does a diplomat do? And it's not a quiz, I'm not going to ask you for answers. But essentially my answer was in 2 parts. The first was stopping bad things happening, war, famine, that kind of thing. The second was making connections. And they were really interested in what I meant when I said we make connections, ideas, people, technology, trade, commerce. And so I told them what I was doing this week. I told them about this event because I think this event is a fantastic example of a way of making connections. There are some great opportunities, great projects that we are hearing about this afternoon, we've heard about this morning, and there are some great investors out there that will like to get involved and could get involved in those projects. And we're talking about physical connections. So we've heard from Luis about roads and infrastructure and rail and airports. I'd like you to think a little bit beyond bricks and mortar. So when we talk about infrastructure, we automatically think of roads and rail. But the supply chain element is really important. So a hospital needs a data system to manage the patient's data. A new metro station needs ticketing, needs signaling, it needs urban design. And in many cases, that's where British companies and British technology can get involved. So think beyond the main infrastructure project and think through to some of those supply chain benefits. So we've heard today about a fantastic macro fundamental situation that Colombia has. And I'm not going to repeat what the Minister of Finance and the President has outlined for you. But we've got low inflation, we've got steady growth, we've got a booming middle class and a thriving innovation and tech industry. And as an embassy, we're very much here to make those connections that I was referring to. So the role of our trade team is to advise and support UK companies that are looking to invest in Colombia and Colombian companies that are looking to invest here in the UK. And we have a new Chamber of Commerce that we founded in February, BritCham Colombia, that is set up exactly to provide a network and provide a community when you enter into the Colombian market. So you may have heard that we are leaving the EU. And last month, we signed a free trade agreement with the Andean countries, so Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, specifically to ensure that there is continuity and certainty for UK and Colombian exporters, importers, and investors as we leave the EU and as we broaden our global ambition. Now, there are several UK companies that have recently launched in Colombia. Minister Stewart, if you hear him speak, likes to use the phrase #DespiteBrexit. And in the last few years, we have seen a wide range of British companies that are looking to the Colombian market, some in traditional sectors, so energy, financial services, education, but also interestingly, and I think importantly, we're seeing companies in the technology and culture spaces looking to export to Colombia. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Endava is a UK tech firm that entered Colombia 3 years ago. They now employ over 400 staff in Colombia, in Bogota, and in Medellin. And if you buy your groceries online here in the UK, chances are that the systems and the technology and the maintenance that underpins that purchase was designed in Colombia by Colombian programmers. Genius Sports is another great example. So Genius Sports is a British sports data software company, opened in Medellin 2 years ago, and they now employ over 250 staff. And just last week, I hosted a mission of 11 CEOs from UK creative companies, cinema, music, in Colombia to sign deals, to make partnerships, and to move forward with projects. So I've been asked today to talk to you specifically about commercial opportunities. Now, like a lot of embassies around the world, we operate programs, and we have these programs in order to deliver long-term goals. And I want to talk to you today about 3 specific programs that we operate in Colombia that have sometimes direct commercial benefit, sometimes more indirect commercial benefit, but I want you to start thinking through where those potential opportunities are and for your businesses. So those programs are the International Climate Fund, the Newton Caldas Fund, and the Prosperity Fund. So I'm going to start with the International Climate Fund, which since 2010 has been active in Colombia. And our aims there are to help tackle deforestation, look at sustainable land use, and also support the private sector in engaging in rural areas. We've got big plans. And later this evening, we will be signing with the President a partnership for sustainable growth. So you're going to hear quite a lot about on the International Climate Fund about what we're doing in Colombia and how we expand our scope of this program. We're going to look at energy efficiency. We're going to look at sustainable transport. And we're also going to look at renewable energy in particular. And there's a lot of commercial space there. Now, the commercial benefits in this area are very clear, and I think it was mentioned this morning, but the UK has managed to grow by 70% since 1990, but still reduce emissions by 43% in the same period. So it's possible to have that clean growth strategy, which is something that we've had a lot from the President earlier this morning. So I want to give you an example so you can understand a little bit about how a government program fund can have some commercial benefits. So In order to support Colombia's green growth transition, we're beginning a project where we will fund the tendering and the technical assistance in order to provide the Bogota mayor area with electric buses. Now, that's obviously great if there are any bus companies in the room, but I want you to think through that there are also fantastic opportunities for battery manufacturers. There are also opportunities for charging stations and even urban design. If you are trying to incorporate charging stations into your management of your design and your public spaces, there is also an opportunity there. The Newton Caldas Fund has operated in Colombia since 2014. Now, this is a fund that looks to build research and innovation capacity and strengthen scientific collaboration. Now, we allocate around $5 million every year to this fund, and it's match funded. So every penny that we put in, the Colombian government puts in as well. I want to give you another example. So scientists from the University of Antioquia and the University of Surrey have found that coffee waste can be turned into electricity by adding microbes. So they add these tiny creatures into the coffee waste, and the really clever bit is the tiny creatures create energy, but that's then captured. And that's then captured and turned into energy that is usable. Fantastic. Now, obviously, the commercial benefits there for the coffee farmer is, they get a cheaper bill. But if you just think about how cutting edge this technology is and the prospects and the possibilities for us applying that in other forums, both here in the UK and in Colombia, you can start to think through the longer term benefits for UK companies. And that's it there, sorry. That's the fantastic machine that turns the microbes into electricity. The Prosperity Fund supports projects that reduce poverty and gender inequality through economic development. Now, we launched this in Colombia 2 years ago. It has a budget of £25.5 million over the period of 5 years, and it has a particular focus on projects for women and girls. We have 3 thematic areas: agriculture, institutional strengthening, and infrastructure. Obviously a big theme of this afternoon's session. Now, the slide has some of the projects that we're working on. There are various different parts of the process, and actually in your booklets you have a lot more detail about those projects and the projects that we've opened up. The way it's structured is that the ideas need to come from the local communities. So we have deliberately chosen areas to work with that are not Bogota and Medellin. We're in rural areas, we're in small towns where it's difficult to access financing. We are attempting to provide an enabler or an accelerator or a startup. So these are ideas that have existed perhaps for a long period of time in a governorship, in a mayor, and we're able to then provide the structuring, financing, and make it happen in a relatively short period of time. So from the idea to execution, we're looking at months for these projects to go live. And then when they go live, they're then out to the market and for companies to bid. I would hope British companies, but as well as international companies or Colombian companies. Infrastructure obviously is a very central theme to this. So, please do engage with us, talk to us if you are interested in any of these projects. I want to just give you an example about how it works. So I'm going to pick the Barrancabermeja project, which is, so Barrancabermeja is a town. It's about 7 hours on a good day by car from Bogota. It's about 7 hours from the coast. It is on Colombia's main riverway. It is also very close to Colombia's railway system that Luis just mentioned, a railway that is currently not being used, that needs to be regenerated, which is another project that we're supporting. So the idea here is that together with our local partner CAF, we're designing and financing a logistics center. And the idea is that we reinvigorate a multimodal transport system. We reactivate the rail, we reactivate the river network, and there's an immediate benefit there for companies, farmers that live in that area, because it's cheaper transport costs, they get their goods to market quicker. Great. But also, more longer term, it's opening up a region. We're looking to open up a region that previously has been too far away in all senses from the market. And so our fund has these secondary benefits that in the future, the goods and the producers of Barranca Bermeja will be cheaper and more accessible to international markets. So just to conclude, I mean, it strikes me very much that our trade relationship is very solid, and we have very complementary markets, and this is something that, again, has been mentioned by previous speakers. And we're very much here in this event, which I think is a fantastic event, is here to make those connections that I was talking about. So I hope that today gives you some examples and some ideas and some follow-up that you're able to then take away, either in one-to-one sessions during the course of tomorrow, or indeed through us or the Chamber or Pro-Colombia. We're very much here to help and to make this happen. And just finally, I mentioned to the children that I'd be here and that you'd be making these connections, and I promised to go back to them and tell them how you all got on. So let me know, please. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank to the organizers for the kind invitation to FDN to participate in this event. I am delighted to be here and for having the opportunity to present to you the progress we have made in several infrastructure projects, and to highlight the opportunities that as more projects are being awarded, new opportunities arise for financiers and for the financial community as a whole. My presentation is divided into two main parts. In the first one, I will go rather quickly on FDN's role and some of the achievements in terms of financings we have right now. And then I will go to present two important projects we are managing in FDN. FDN is a development financial institution specialized in infrastructure, project finance, and advisory services. Our aim is to reduce market failures, to complement rather than displace private sector financial institutions. For that reason, we have two kinds of services. On the one hand, the financial services through different products that allow us the license, the powerful licenses we have that allow us to invest in different products, debt, equity, capital markets, and guarantees. And on the other hand, the advisory services we provide as different services, advisory services to the public sector entities regarding their programs, infrastructure programs, and also we act as investment bankers. Even though we are specialized in transportation, we also provide services to different sectors, public sector entities and other entities in terms of energy, urban mobility, urban renovation, water and sanitation, public utilities, and social infrastructure. Colombia has, as Mr. Kleyn said, a strong PPP framework, but it is not only because we say it, this corresponds to the Economist Intelligence Unit. Colombia ranks number 2, only after Chile, in terms of having quite a strong PPP framework. FDN, our aim is to complement, to fill gaps, to reduce market failures. We have grown through innovation and crowding in products. You will see here that we have committed 2.1 billion in only 4 years, billion in the 4G program and 0.3 billion in other sectors. And what is interesting to note is that we went from traditional products like senior debt to more innovative products, the products that the market requires for financial closings. And for that reason, we are offering different innovative products such as liquidity lines, the Colombian funding peso line, and debt and equity funds. Here, you can see, in particular, 4 products that have been quite innovative in the contract, in the country, and that led to more mobilization of resources. The first, as credit enhancement, the FDN liquidity line, $313 million committed in the 4-year program for the benefit of 6 concessionaires. We created 3 debt funds for 1.3 billion, Ashmore CAF, Sura Credit Corp, and BlackRock. We are part of the 3 funds. In terms of equity funds, last year we created 2 new equity funds in Franco with the local pension funds and CDPQ, and the Colombian Infrastructure Partners Equity Fund, which is run by Old Mutual. And on the other hand, we have the funding line in pesos for international banks and for multilateral institutions. IDB Invest, IDB, CAF, and ICO from Spain have used that line so far. So all that innovation shows its rewards. Here, the payoff of having different source diversification. We see here that the amount of financial closings in the 4G program went from 3.8 billion to 6.7 billion from 2016 to this year, up to this year. And what is interesting to note is that as local banks reduce their participation because different restrictions and for the event of Odebrecht, other players have come to the country, and we can see a significant important participation of international banks, capital markets, debt funds, besides FDN. So up to now, we have up to June, 15 financial closings, 5 more are expected for the rest of the year. And up to now, we have had 5 bond issues in international capital markets, the 3 debt funds I mentioned, 8 international banks participating, and 9 local banks. Here, I would like to mention quickly that the needs for infrastructure in the country are quite high. You will see almost 50 billion for the next 5 years, according to the National Planning Department. Besides the 4G program with 7 billion, there is a necessity in other sectors. Mr. Kleyn mentioned urban access to different cities, and also some of the other transportation projects, such as airports, ports, the connection in the Magdalena River, and the Central Rail Corridor I will mention in some minutes. Then the massive transportation projects, such as the Metro of Bogota, the light rail transit of Medellin, Transmilenio, Regiotram. In terms of energy, at least 7 billion. This is the amount only corresponding to projects funded by the Colombian government, not of public services utilities, and more than 3 billion for social infrastructure in different projects like PPPs of hospitals and schools, for instance. In order to face this enormous challenge, the role of FDN is to provide new innovative products, as I mentioned. Besides the different products I already mentioned, let me also mention the new ones that we are working on, mini perms, in order to facilitate mobilization of banks with shorter-term structures. We are working in securitization and for infrastructure loans in order to free up the bank's lending capacity. We are right now working in a pilot issuance for $200 million. We create a new area. We have now a vice president of capital markets development, and we are working in different products such as co-structuring bond issuance with ratings lower than AA+. We are providing liquidity in secondary markets. We are creating credit enhancement products and trying to bring to the table new investors from the Pacific Alliance. I will talk about the products of renewable energy later. In terms of the key infrastructure projects, just a quick mention in the sense that we are handling about 25 projects for a capex above 10 billion, mainly in transportation and urban mobility. And before talking about Metro, I would like very quickly to mention the case of Transmilenio, the fleet renewal, because there is here the opportunities that we want to create and to facilitate. FDN was the advisor to the city of Bogota and Transmilenio for this deal that was awarded in November 2018 with a capex of almost 1 billion. And here we saw the possibility of improve the efficiency of the structure and reduce the financial cost for the awardees in that process. For that reason, we are working in a securitization of the cash flows derived from the economic rights of the concession contract. We will issue a securitization of 110 million in a couple of weeks, and this bond complies with the sustainable bond guidelines. So it is an opportunity. I will skip this, and I will talk a little bit about Metro of Bogota. Very quickly, a couple of features of the project. It is 100% viaduct, length of almost 24 kilometers, 16 stations, a rolling stock of 23 trains. We, FDN, we are acting as advisors. We were hired by the Colombian government through the Ministry of Finances and also from the city of Bogota through the Empresa Metro. And we as FDN, we assemble a team with different companies and firms specialized in technical, financial, and legal issues. And we have had an important progress in this project. I'm not going to all the detail, but let me stress, for instance, that in November 2017, the agreement between the Republic of Colombia and the city of Bogota was signed, by which the 70% of the project will be funded by the Colombian government and the rest of it by the city. In January of last year, there was a definition of having a single DBF MOT contract. In August, credit lines were approved by the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the European Investment Bank for a total of 1.7 billion. And we initiated the pre-qualification process by the end of the last year. And the final list of pre-qualified firms was done by April this year. So here is the basic structure. It is a 27-year contract, DBF OMT, between Empresa Metro and SPV concessionaire. What is important here to highlight is that the resources, the funds comes from multi-annual budgetary commitments from the Republic of Colombia and the District of Bogota, as I mentioned. That means that payments will be done by construction milestones and availability payments, and that there is no commercial risk transfer to the concessionaire. Here is the detail of the way we are the CAPEX being funded. From 4.3 billion of CAPEX, 700 million will be executed directly by Empresa Metro. That corresponds to land acquisition, utilities networks, and the PMO. 3.6 billion will be executed directly by the concessionaire, of which 2.3 billion will be paid as cash payments during construction. Of it, 1.7 billion are already financed by the multilateral banks, as I mentioned, and there are $600 million that are required as financing for Empresa Metro. So that's an opportunity for financiers in order to provide that financing to Empresa Metro. And on the other hand, 1.3 billion will be paid to through public debt notes that we call TPEs in the contract for approximately 1 billion, and 300 million as availability payments based on KPIs, key performance indicators, during the operation of the project. So the concessionaire will need financing for about 1.3 billion. We think in our model that could be something like 400 million of equity of the concessionaire and 900 million as debt. So here there is an opportunity to finance the necessities, the needs of liquidity and long-term debt by the concessionaire. A couple of comments on the public debt note that we call TPE in the contract. TPEs are due upon termination of construction milestones. We call it execution units. And the completion of that units triggers the payment of a predetermined number of TPEs. The features of TPEs are quite important to stress. They are autonomous. That means that the payment is independent of the concessionaire performance. They are unconditional in the sense that payment obligation is done in a certain period of time at fixed payment dates, and that TPEs are irrevocable in the sense that payments will be done regardless of performance, termination, or suspension of the contract. And above all, that the TPEs will be guaranteed by the Republic of Colombia. Here we have the list of pre-qualified consortium. I'm not going to mention all of these, but you can see that not only important names well-known in the market are there, and we have an important participation of different countries, Spain, Mexico, China, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, China, again, Spain, Brazil, South Korea, and France. Here, we have the opportunities I already mentioned, debt by Empresa Metro, the concessionaire debt, long and short term, insurance policies of different kinds, and in terms of the dates and the tendering process, we will publish in 2 weeks' time the final bidding documents, prior no objections by the multilateral banks. The reception of proposals are expected by the end of September, and after the evaluation, the contract will be awarded by the end of October of this year. And let me now go to La Dorada-Santa Marta rail corridor. In this case, we are talking about a strategic corridor that connects the middle of the country, La Dorada, up to the coast in Santa Marta. So it is strategic in the sense that will bring and stimulate more foreign trade. The length is 769 kilometers. It's supposed to increase the competitiveness of the transportation sector and reducing costs by 30%. It is a key corridor for intermodality in the sense that it connects not only the ports, Santa Marta and Barranquilla, but also it runs through 7 provinces or states. So it is quite important in that strategic sense. And it will bring also advantages in terms of energy efficiency because it allows higher performance and bigger load capacity. The government has given a strong support for this project and for rail corridors. There has been short-term efforts to invest and to repair and attend critical points in infrastructure. There has been a train test and reactivation of regular shipments. We signed an agreement with ANI in order to work on the different corridors, and we prioritize these that I will show the schedule. According to the market analysis, we estimate that the load will increase from 3.7 million tons in the first year operation to 4.3. Here you can see the different potential goods that we identify as a possibility for cargo, containers, steel, break bulk, oils, hydrocarbons, chemicals, and the colors, if you want to go to the details, corresponds if the cargo goes to the coast or comes from the coast to the interior, meaning imports and exports ways. The amount of this project is it is significant. We are talking about almost 900 million of capex, 305 million of rolling stock, and almost 600 in the railroad. Expected to have the modernization of the infrastructure and superstructure, upgrading the system to minimum to level 3, and there will be also a construction of rail lines connections to the ports. And finally, we have here some of the opportunities. As Greg mentioned, we are discussing with the UK government the conditions by which the Prosperity Fund will support the railways project in Colombia. They are already doing something there. And there are opportunities for construction, rolling stock providers, operators, and also for financing if part of the project will be done through civil works and public works. The schedule. We are working in the project preparation. We are defining the technical specifications for rehabilitation and maintenance of the infrastructure on the rolling stock operation and the design of the corridor operation. In the second semester, we will be working on the design of the transaction scheme and the procurement specification, and the tender process of this project will be starting by June 2020. That's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, many thanks for ProColombia and for organizing this event. I think it's an extraordinary opportunity to show to the world what Colombia is doing after what was presented throughout the day. So for me, I will talk briefly about the social infrastructure projects. So just as a way of introduction, from IFC, being the private arm of the World Bank Group, we have been working in Colombia with the government for quite some time and participated in the structuring of the 4G program back in 2012 and in prior projects, concession projects to that. Since then, we have been looking to see what else can be done in terms of the second wave of different PPP projects. And this is where we arrive to working with the social infrastructure projects. So in IFC, there is a department of over 120 people worldwide, which solely do PPPs. We have closed close to 450 projects in the last years around the world. And in Colombia, since 5 years ago, we created an infrastructure fund with our colleagues and partners from FDN to develop PPP projects. So this, as I was saying, is understood as the second wave of PPPs for Colombia after the 4G program. We understand that we want to take PPP beyond roads, beyond infrastructure transport projects, and we believe that by working on hospitals and in schools is a way of achieving this. So social infrastructure is well known throughout the world, particularly here in the UK, but it is a new challenge for Colombia. We have yet to see the type of investors that could be interested. As Greg pointed out in his previous intervention, there is a lot that British companies can do with these type of projects, not only from the long-term investors' point of view, but the design and all the particularities that these type of projects face. So basically, we have the experience due to the developments in the legislation. We have proven contracts that have already been challenged in the market, and we invite the British investors to participate actively in these participations. So it is a huge opportunity to diversify the portfolios, and as we have seen it, and the government has stated, these are pilot projects, and we want to have an enormous replication effect of these projects going forward. So as we will see for the hospitals and the schools, there is a lot of potential. These are pilots, as I have just said, so don't be scared by the fairly small amount of each of these investments, because there is plenty to come, and this is the opportunity to show the market that these can be done. We are close to opening the tender processes for these two programs. We still are facing the final approvals from the central government and for the schools and from the city council for the hospitals. But we should be seeing these projects in the market for the last semester of this year. So, talking about the schools then. The city of Bogota, when this administration took office, it wanted to develop a program for public hospitals. 5 hospitals were initially conceived as part of the PPP program. Due to fiscal restrictions, 2 of these hospitals were decided to be developed under public works. These will go to market in these coming months, and 3 of the projects Three of these projects will be tendered as PPPs. One of these tender projects, the Bosa, is the project that will come to market in the coming months. on then. So these 5 projects, 2 will be tendered through Public Works. Out of the 3 remaining, 1 is coming to market. The other 2 will be left structured for the following administration, which will take office next January. So the Bosa Hospital is located in one of the poorest areas of Bogota. It will be 215 beds with an approximate investment of around $100 million. This will be focused on medium to high complexity chronic diseases. And as I mentioned, will be tendered, the other 2 will be tendered in the next administration. So the scope of the project will basically be the design, finance, construction, equipment renewal, and the provision of non-medical services. So there is indeed a space for highly qualified operators. The design, as I mentioned, is crucial for these type of assets. And obviously the operation experience that British companies have is of essence. So we are looking into a period, into a contract which will be 18 years long, comprising of a 3.5 pre-operation phase and a 14.5 years of the operation and maintenance phase. Basically, we are open in the pre-qualification phase. This is a 2-phase project program, and the pre-qualification will be open until next 28th of June. So we have actively promoted this project in the market. We were here in London a few weeks back, actively talking to potential investors, and we are basically a week away from closing this pre-qualification stage, which will allow those who pre-qualify to make part of the tender process, which will be in the market a few weeks after that then. So basically the expressions of interest, you'll see the chronogram here. It will be until the 5th of July, the observations until the 12th of July. Basically the final pre-qualification hearing will be in the 30th of July. So basically we will see a project that if the City Council approves the availability payments, then we would be opening the project in the coming month of August. So just in terms of the information, all the information is in the data room. The data room is available to all. We have already received over 300 questions in terms of the different contracts, all the different legal and technical documentation that is supporting the contract. So we'll be more than happy to answer any of the questions you may have. For this and for the schools that I will mention in a moment, we will have one-on-one sessions in the coming days. So please feel free to talk to the people of ProColombia to find a slot to talk in particularities. In terms of the schools, basically again, as I mentioned, this is an initiative carried out by the Ministry of Education where it wants to go towards a single shift system and needs to build over 31 new classrooms, both through PPP schemes and through the traditional public works. This is a huge bet because the ministry and the government want to diversify its sources for reaching these much needed infrastructure to close the gap. So basically we are seeing that these projects will be carried out by pilots in the cities of Medellin and in Barranquilla. There will be, the risk that will be behind these projects will be 70 and 80% of the government of Colombia and 20 and 30% of one of each of the cities. And basically these projects are being structured by our colleagues from the FDN and by IFC. A few numbers, basically 21 schools will be tendered, 13 in Medellin, 8 in Barranquilla. You can see in the chart the different interventions that they will have in terms of total reconstruction or reconstruction and refurbishment, or the building of new buildings. So basically will be, these are schools that have already been identified, that have all the paperwork and all the property issues in place. So that we would see coming to market very, very soon. We are, basically the transaction structure is a typical PPP project. We will see a 20-year contract. Basically a pre-operating phase 2 to 3 years in which the financial closing and the construction is expected to occur. And then a maintenance, operating and maintenance of the rest of the 17 years. The concessionaire will receive a traditional availability payment as a cap, and depending on the key indicators, the key performance indicators, obviously deductions will be made if they do not comply with what is stated and regulated in the contracts. As I mentioned, it is a mixed risk from the concessionaire's point of view, in the sense that the majority of the annual payments will come from the central government, and in a lesser proportion from the cities. Again, the information can be found in these websites, but I would be more than happy to provide more information if needed. So I think that's about it. Thank you very much.